We are live. What's going on, Fast Turn Radio? Listeners, watchers, replay catchers, gompers, fist pump. So tonight we have, again, Arya Scheinbein sitting in for Dwayne Malik for his Fast Turn Radio. We have Chris Menice here live with us. And there are a bunch of things that we will try and cover tonight, depending on how much time permitting. Chris only has about 25-30 minutes to be on the show with us. So some of the topics that we are going to try and hit is, it's summer, obviously, Dwayne's away, but there are things to be done. Lots of people have lots of time on their hands. So one thing we want to talk about is the future, which is retirement. The next item would be Prime Day. Took place yesterday. We'll see, we'll talk about some stats and some interesting takeaways from that. Have a few interesting things there. And then given that it's summer, after we kind of go through retirement and things like that, we can talk about what could you be doing now, what's coming up next, what's on the radar, where are we headed in the rest of the year, and how do you plan for the remaining 6 months of the year. All right. So Chris and I talk a lot offline about, in general, about how the marketplace of a lot of FBA sellers are people that may or may not be very involved in business, may or may not be very entrepreneurial their whole lives, but some of the fair number of people that you see in the Facebook groups we see are coming from jobs, and then they make a transition over to Amazon to make that their full-time income. And one of the things that we kind of talk about that has been hit on a little bit, I'd say in the last few months, but hasn't been touched in great detail, is what are people doing with their money, in the sense of how are they planning for the future? What are they doing? Are they taking care of the necessary items? Because a lot of people, when you're at a job that has a 401k, a lot of times it's just coming out of your paycheck. And then a lot of times you're at a job and you don't even think about your 401k. And here you make a transition over to full-time FBA or even part-time FBA. And if you don't have a 401k, are you doing the right things, whether it's a SEP, whether it's an IRA, whether it's other mechanisms? So I'm not a financial planner, so I don't know all the ins and outs. And Chris, actually, given that he is self-employed, knows a lot more about this. But this is just something that Chris and I feel like there needs to be education and thought, specifically thought for people who haven't given it much thought. So that was a topic we wanted to talk about. So with all that rambling background, Chris, you want to kick off some just preliminary ideas of, hey, what are some of the things that people should definitively be thinking about if they haven't even done anything yet?
Yeah, I mean, first, I will say I'm also not a financial planner. So, you take whatever I say with a grain of salt, but go research it and make it your own, and then check with your own financial planner if you want. I personally don't have a financial planner because I feel like I've researched this stuff enough and I understand it. And I've built a solid plan for what to do. So I feel pretty comfortable talking about that. If you don't have a retirement plan, you're not alone, so don't freak out. It's okay, but you should have one. And you just think of it like you may not want to work forever, basically, is how I think about it. And I know personally, I'll probably always be working, I can assume, but that doesn't always mean I'll be able to make sufficient income to provide for my needs. And I think that's really where you want to make sure that you have retirement. And also, you want to also be aware of, just the fact that you may not be able to provide into some of those really later years, because you really can't predict how long you're going to live. I mean, you could live until you're 90, but are you going to be able to work, enough that your basic needs are going to be covered? So that's really the key, I think. And so I think it's so important for people to make sure that they're planning that now, whether you're 25 or even, 18. You could do it so early. But even if you're not, even if you're 50 or even 55, you could still be planning for this and getting ready and doing your best to save as much money as possible.
Yeah. So I think it goes in a few different categories, right? Like if you're young and you're just starting out, the power of compounding is something that should not be lost on anyone listening to this, because, however young you are, if you put every dollar you put in, just think of how many years it's going to grow, and it's going to get, multiply on a compounding basis, tax free.
Right.
They tax it until you take it out.
And just a quick example, like a guy like me who's 35, right? I've done pretty well contributing to a 401k type of account, so it's tax advantaged. If I never contribute anything there again, I'll have a pretty decent amount of money that I can take out every month when I hit 60, and because it has 25 years to compound.
Right.
I don't plan to not contribute anymore. But it's just one of those things. It's the power of that compounding interest.
Completely. And I think, I'm just going to throw this out, not to make this like a math session or a pure finance session. Just there's something called the rule of 72, which basically says, if I take 9 years at an 8% return, right? So it's an 8 times a 9 gets me to the 72. My money's going to double. Therefore, in that, so if I'm getting that 8% over 9 years, then the money will double in those years. So even if you were dealing with like low returns, you can still double your money or more than double your money, especially when you're dealing with, like, if I just gave you 9 years, and Chris is using himself as an example, you have 25 years, you're talking about it's going to double many multiples.
Almost 3 times.
So just looking at that from that perspective, setting aside money today, being someone who has a full-time job and this is not their full-time income, I think I look at it from a very different perspective than other people, and I think, Chris has made this business a lifestyle for himself, as opposed to both of us being these guys who need to put up the biggest numbers and show and talk about, how big our sales were. We're not necessarily throwing every dollar back into the business to grow, whereas a lot of people that you find, that's what they're doing. So if you kind of just take a step back for a second and look at that, whether that is what you want to be doing, whether that's reckless and you don't agree with that, that's not really per se the key. The key is that if you just take out that small portion, whatever the government allows, whatever type of plan you set up, whether it's a IRA or if it's a SEP, depending on how you're structured, again, talk to a tax advisor or planner.
There are a bunch of different ones too. Like you can do a traditional IRA, for instance, as a small business owner, and that will allow you to sock away like $12,000 a year. I say tax free. It's really tax advantage. So
so we call it tax exempt.
Yeah, it lessens your tax bill at the end of the year too. So it reduces your tax burden.
So again,
it's another benefit, but
depending on how you're set up.
Yep, exactly. Depending on how you're set up. And then there are other things, other plans like you mentioned the SEP, which I think last I checked, there were ways to potentially contribute up to close to $50,000 or $53,000 a year into those.
Yeah, I think that's a percentage of what you bring in, correct?
It's a percentage. It's something between 20 and 25%. So I think there are some rules around that. So,
okay. So the reason we bring this up now is because, as I opened with, a lot of people are kind of hanging out, doing things over the summer, a little bit slower in the business. Now, granted, some people are like pedal to the metal, and this is like their best months, July between Prime Day and people having Christmas in July and the summer, all the summer outing events and things that you can sell into. Totally understanding that. But keep in mind that we know a lot of people take vacation, a lot of people take time off. So thinking about family, thinking about future, this is a good time to kind of try and set some of this stuff up so that when it dawns on you in December and you're in the middle of Q4 and it's impossible to get everything done, granted, usually I think you have somewhere till like, March 15th or April 15th, somewhere around there, to kind of get.
Actually, it depends.
Okay.
Yeah, it really depends. Like that was one of the things that I learned my first year as a seller was I had planned on contributing to what they call a simple IRA, which is just it's another one of these plans. And but the form to file that and get it set up is actually due in November.
There you go.
So I didn't have it done, and my accountant at the time, I was leaning more heavily on him to kind of give me information since I was so new at the business. And he assured me that it would be fine because it was in March or April or whatever. And then I got to March or April and that was a no-go. And so instead of
Because I think the traditional IRA, you have till those months.
You do. And but the simple IRA is a little bit different, and there are some benefits with that one that I was trying to grab a hold of, and it just didn't happen. And so as a result, my tax burden ended up being like $3,000 or $4,000 more than I was expecting, just because of that one misstep. So interesting.
So that's a fair point. The other reason I bring this up is not to ingrain fear into people's minds or lives, but the last 2 years in a row, we have seen July and even June, but July be months where there was new algorithms in the suspension mechanism on the Amazon platform, and different batches of sellers. Last summer was a big wave of new sellers in batches. They came like in weekly waves, to the point where Amazon couldn't even like go through the applications for reinstatement fast enough. They were dealing with, like, instead of 24 to 48 hours, they were dealing with like 7 to 10 days. But I say that because, again, you want to be thinking about your business and your life long term. And so, hopefully the algorithm stays the same. Everybody's figured out that they need to keep their business clean, their accounts clean. So suspensions, hopefully are not an issue for anyone. But that being said, you just want to be thinking futuristically. You want to be looking at understanding things can happen, and game planning now when things are a little bit more quiet, hopefully in your life for the summer. Take a look at what you want to be doing for retirement and setting up the proper plans.
Yeah, not only that, but like you're just saying, like, you want to talk about suspension and what happens. Like, oh, maybe, like you said, we kind of do this not as our full-time gig, right? So it's, but like I said, I use it as a lifestyle thing. So I use it to accelerate our retirement or to purchase a home or whatever it happens to be. And so if I lose that, it definitely stings, right? And so you want to get your business in a position where if you do happen to get suspended or you have to step away for a short amount of time, that your business can continue to pay you even during that time. So I think it's really important, even outside of that's just business budgeting setup stuff.
No, I mean,
like suspension protection. Like, if I got suspended now, I'd be fine paying myself probably until I got reinstated. That would be okay.
So when you say paying yourself, from the money you've set aside, we're talking about, or
not for the retirement funds, no.
So when you say paying yourself, what do you mean by that?
Just my business pays me. That's the whole point.
Yeah, no, I understand. But if the business is not bringing in any cash flow, how is it paying you?
I've built up sort of this business emergency fund for things like that.
Okay, right.
So having aside. Having a fund that, if something goes wrong, you can kind of weather, or maybe you just like taking vacation and you want to take 2 months off. You can still pay yourself over that time.
No, so that makes complete sense to me. That
and I guess it's not an opinion held by everyone, right? Because some people just want to grow, but I find that I'm at a phase now where I'm not so interested in growth anymore. Like, I'm comfortable where it is because I know it takes a certain amount of time, and I feel like it's I think it's Pareto's principle, the 80-20.
Yep.
Where, like, I've kind of honed in on what I can do to make about 80%. So I kind of just want to do that,
which is completely, fair and acceptable. I mean, and I think that was like the point with, I was making earlier, that a lot of people are just taking every dollar, rolling it back in. Again, whether that's reckless or not, I think people look at this as a lifestyle thing and say, hey, is that what I really want to be doing? Or do I just am I okay making a certain amount? Because, when Steven Peterson was on a couple of weeks ago, we talked about one of the things he said that he really learns from all the interviews he does is what he doesn't want to do.
Yeah, sure.
And I think that's really important. Like, if you actually spend the time talking to people or listening to people who are doing 100, 200, 500,000 a month, and you understand like what is going into their day in and day out, there's a lot. It's not, they're not just doing what you're doing faster, like they have either more people relying on them,
stress,
different things, whether you have employees, whether you have shoppers, whether you have part-time people, whatever it is, there's a lot, going on. It just doesn't like magically happen that you're like, I'm doing 10,000 this month and now I'm doing 50,000 and now I'm doing 500,000. There are steps that have to be done. There's things that have to be done, and you're managing a lot more items,
Yeah, no, totally.
For you, it's a lifestyle thing. And that's exactly right. I mean, I think, Dwayne himself, like last year he had the road to 500, and this year he wanted to try and get to 1 million. He's clearly, last time he posted or had discussion around it, he was on a projection to be probably closer to like 1.5 million. But at the same time, he's making sure that it fits in with his lifestyle, and he's doing what he wants to be doing.
Yeah, which is exactly why he stepped back this summer. He's taking some time and enjoying himself and his family.
Yeah, exactly. Listen, the kids are off, his wife is off, everyone wants to be, doing what they want to be doing. So definitely something to be thinking about when you're trying to, look at your business. And, it's a lot of times it's hard. It's hard in the Facebook community to see these numbers and say, well, oh man, I'm not a success, or I want to get there. When realistically, like, this is something I've talked about many times, and I really wish I could get the videos from the ACE conference, because this was like my whole speech was the premise of kind of having a vision of what you want, see where you personally want to be going.
Yeah.
You set up that plan and know the steps that you want to take to get there.
Yeah.
Because you have to have your why. This has to be about you and why you want to do it. What I want to do or Chris wants to do doesn't really matter. It's all about you. And that is the beauty of this business. You can make it however you want to make it. But you have to remember that this is really about you and your family and the success that you want, whether it's, 1 million a year, not even 1 million a year, 10 million a year. You have to know what you want to be doing.
Yeah, I totally agree. I mean, you really have to have that why. That's the driving force. And you don't have to sell 1 million to be a successful seller. You have to sell as much as you need to pay you what you want to make.
For sure.
That's pretty much it.
You look at take for example Dan and Eric, the Wholesale Formula guys, who actually will be guests on this show. I think it's going to be in about 2 weeks or so. But you look at them and their operations, and their top line may be massive, relative to, an individual. But, keep in mind, they have massive infrastructure as well. And there's real things that they're doing every day that kind of getting them there. And you have to understand that. Like, if your why or your goals are, hey, listen, I don't really care about that top line number, but I want to be able to pay my kids pay my kids college. Or, I want to be able to every year take my family to Disney. Or it's, hey, you have, someone like you who has, hey, I want my wife and I to be stopping working at a certain point in our lives and be completely debt free and to be living the lifestyle we want to be doing. Those are like achievable and, designable whys and goals. And it's designed for you.
Yep. And I mean, that basically is our plan. Like, we're currently working on, saving money and using as many means possible to put money into retirement, so that way we can retire earlier than the normal retirement age. I mean, just because we realize that, I don't know, we don't mind working. That's fine. But for me personally, like, I am a very creative guy, and I may want to work at some point to not make money. And so having, being retired, which is really just another word for financially independent, being financially independent gives me an avenue to work for no money if I choose to.
Right. And at the same time, it allows you to, it doesn't even have to be work for no money. You can be doing whatever you so desire, right? Like,
right. I more mean like, if I'm going to sail, ride off into the sunset and paint, do some like oil painting of landscapes or something, I may never sell any of them. That's my point, but I could do that if I wanted.
Right. No, 100%. It's one of those things where if you have a specific goal that is not to get to that point, right? Like you have your job or you want to be doing this all the time. Like a lot of people look at this and say, hey, this is my retirement game plan. You know, don't take it away. We're not saying, hey, you got to stop and chill out and do nothing. That's not,
Sure.
you know, if that's not what you want, that's fine. But understand that you don't want to have to do it, right? Like you like it now, but 3 years from now, you may not like it, or it may not, or who knows what.
So Travis has a question here. It says, are you investing in anything other than your 401k for retirement, such as real estate? So we don't have specific real estate investments, but it's definitely things that I've looked into for the future. So nothing for like income generating investments, right? That's more of a revenue stream versus a retirement fund. But what is part of our plan is owning our house. And that's sort of a big part of going to be a big part of our ability to retire and be financially independent is not having a mortgage, right? Or not having to pay rent anywhere or things like that. So in that regard, yes, we do have sort of this real estate investment in that it's going to, once it's paid, which is in that sort of medium time frame, then, you know, we
define for everyone, what's the definition of medium time frame for you?
For us personally, it's sort of probably like 10 to 15 years from now, okay. Right? It's that phase of life before we actually hit retirement age. So it's probably between like maybe 45 and 60 or something like that. So where we're basically reducing our expenses by not having a mortgage at that point. And so each month we don't need as much to live on. Right. And that's just as important, I think, as saving for retirement is understanding how to save on a month-to-month basis and being able to reduce your costs in effective ways. So, I mean, paying off our mortgage effectively reduces, you know, like a quarter of our expenses every month.
So it's interesting. So I think that definitely depends on where you live in the country.
Yep.
And you know, where I live in the Northeast, my mortgage is not. I mean, I have a smaller mortgage, but you know, property tax here is ridiculous, and there's lots of other cost of living things. So for it,
sure.
Travis, like, you know, to answer the question that you asked, like real estate, for me, houses. Less of a, hey, I got to remove the mortgage because that may or may not have a massive change in my life. But obviously it will. I mean, listen, whatever you're paying to the bank, you're putting into your pocket that month for sure. Paying it off has its benefits. At the same time, from a real estate perspective, I think there's two ways to look at, you know, investing in real estate. And, you know, I think a lot of people, I've seen a lot of conversations over the years of people looking to have, like, let's call it a side hustle to their side hustle, right? So they want to maybe get a rental property, or they want to own another property to rent or flip or who knows what. So looking at that, I think people have to understand that there is a time commitment and an involvement required to do that. Besides the capital, there's just, you have to, you know, expect that there's going to be some sort of time commitment on your part, or at least an expense then that's offset by hiring someone to do that.
Yeah. You have to be wired for that, I think, you know. That's
I mean, I think it also depends on where you live in the country and where you want to own that property. Because
guess what? Guess what? You can live anywhere you want. You're running a lifestyle business. Move wherever you want.
True. That's a fair point. But the other way is also, there are, you know, Travis, there are places where you can invest in real estate directly into people who are going to manage the property. Now, granted, the returns are not going to look like if you owned it and you were cash flowing it and then eventually selling it. You know, typically when you look at a real estate investment, you're looking at what we call an IRR, the internal rate of return. So you're looking at it over the lifespan from cash flow out in the beginning to all the cash flows back in over that time period, plus the exit. So depending on what you want to do, like I know people that invest in real estate that are completely passive. They're investors in real estate deals. At the same time, you can buy REITs, which are real estate investment trusts. They're publicly traded stocks. They trade like any other stock, but what they are legally required to do is kick out 95% of their income annually to investors in the form of a dividend. So that's another way to be involved in real estate. And, and then we talked about like owning to rent out. So I think those are some of the ideas. In terms of making it as part of your retirement, again, you have to know how much time and effort is going to go into which, strategy or which, path you want to be taking on your real estate. So
I just posted in the chat, affordanything.com. The woman's name, I believe, is Paula Pant, and she does real estate and she writes a lot about it. And she lives off of it. So
there you go. It's just like all these,
check her out. She's, she seems to be really good at it, and, she's kind of an expert in that area, I would say.
Okay. I've actually never heard of her. I've never even heard of that site. So I'll take a look at that later. Cool. Yeah. So we're coming up on almost on 8:25, 8:30. I have 8:27, 8:28. So I know you have to bail in a little bit. So are there any more questions for Chris before he has to jump? We are going to touch on a whole slew of other topics, probably.
Yeah, what else were you going to talk about?
We're going to talk about
to get in on one of them.
Prime Day takeaways. And then what do we do now here that we're at the summer? Had a whole bunch of things to think about. Then talking about heading into the back half of the year, planning for
that was the one. Yeah.
Planning for 6 months.
Yeah.
So
I don't really have time to get into that, but that's like, we love that stuff, like that's, mad scientist stuff.
Yeah, I mean, Chris and I just, we spoke the other day about what we're going to be doing certain things for the holidays already. And
we're already planning.
We are already planning.
I did a lot of research last year and employed some strategies at the same time that were very effective. So
definitely.
I'm excited to explore those again.
Cool. And so I think I will start with the Prime Day takeaways, and then feel free, Chris, if you have to bail out at any point, to jump off. Because if I start going into the planning, it's going to be mid-sentence and you're going to have to leave. So I don't.
Totally.
Your stuff. Yeah.
I'm hearing lots of things in the background about having to go potty, or I did go potty, or something. I'm not sure. So.
I hope that's not the one that's going with you. Like that sounds like the younger one.
Yeah, that was the young one.
Okay,
that's my son. He's potty training.
That's the buzz cut going on this summer.
Yeah. He's looking sharp. So, all right, have fun.
All right, thank you. Yeah. All right, so yesterday, for everyone who knows or doesn't know, was Amazon Prime Day. So the interesting thing that I found is Amazon put out a press release today on that, and I saw CNBC basically had covered it pretty well. I saw it come across the screen, and then I actually saw the article. So I think if I put this in the chat, nope, that is not the article. Hang on one second. Let me try and get the article because I had saved a link for it. I specifically wanted to talk about a few key things that were in there I found intriguing. Let's see if this works. Okay, hang on one second, bear with me. Okay, there we go. So I put a link to the article that was a news article from CNBC today. And it was kind of interesting was, I think depending on what you did last year, so last year Prime Day was July 15th, so you'd have to look at July 15th versus July 12th, year over year, right? So I would say, looking at a couple of quick stats for me, it was probably 2x last year and probably about 3 times my average day. So to me, I don't care about, the numbers, the dollars and things like that from this perspective. To me, the big takeaway was just the sheer velocity that the site, what Amazon has been able to do in the middle of the summer has been truly amazing. Basically, that article talks about how it was the best, their best sales day ever. So that is honestly truly amazing that in a random day in July that they spend millions of dollars in marketing on, they are able to generate mass amount of traffic. So in that article, there is the press release towards the bottom of Amazon, and they give some crazy stats in there. The most intriguing thing to me was the stat that said more than 2 million toys and more than 1 million pairs of shoes were purchased on Prime Day 2016. That's a staggering number on both counts, especially since many people that we know in the FBA community are toy sellers, and myself and many other people are very involved in shoes. So again, I have a free Facebook group with Brittany Ross where it's shoes and clothing. We talk about it. We answer all questions related to that. That group is Your Source Inventory on Facebook, so feel free to check that out. Anyway, the velocity was high. The types of items that were sold were really interesting. I mean, they were able to drive so many sales to buy their products, Kindle Fires, Echoes, things that just make their customers stickier. And you know what that means for us? It means more Prime members. They're going to have more members who are going to pay to be Prime members, and therefore will shop with FBA, who want the Prime delivery. So all in all, it's a huge win for all of us. The other thing that really, really stood out to me, so again, more value in doing it FBA versus MF because they're just driving more people to be Prime members, which means that the people want the Prime benefits, which you get from the FBA sellers. The other quotes in the article were really, really interesting. If you look in the quotes in the article, they all are big brands. So what does this mean? Does this mean that if you look, I didn't write down which brands were quoted, but a ton, I'd say there were like 5 or 6 big brands that were quoted in there that they were able to offer great deals to their customers. And if you look, some of them were selling FBA direct, and some of them were just kind of passing it through Amazon. So Amazon was the actual seller, and they cut a deal somehow, whatever, with Amazon. This, though, kind of really resonates with what we've been seeing, what we've been hearing, and I think something to pay attention to is the brands are coming. Amazon has figured out, as we continue to see retailer after retailer go bankrupt, Amazon is chasing the brands to get them to sell direct on their platform. And you just have to continue to evolve, and you have to plan for it. And this article tells me that when they're quoting brands selling on Amazon, either they're selling it directly to Amazon and to generate sales and get brand recognition, or they're selling themselves as an FBA seller. So kind of pay attention to it. The other thing is one of the brands that was quoted was this company, LSTN. Never heard of it, so of course I went and I looked it up, and I did see that it seems like they are the FBA seller, they are the brand, and it may be like a private label company, whatever it is, but they are a brand, and they were selling it direct on Amazon. So again, an interesting takeaway. And I think if you looked through the deals throughout the day, whether they were Prime deals or Lightning deals or whatever it was, I would say a fair bit of them were definitely private label companies, private label brands. So taking the takeaways for this for me was toys and shoes. They quoted how many pairs, unbelievable numbers. They drove more traffic, so more Prime users, which means more devices that are Prime sticky. So the Fire, the Echo, all these things just drive more users to their site, which is what they're doing. They're spending money to get more and more customers stuck on their site. Unbelievably smart. Then the quotes from the companies are coming from brands. Brands are coming, brands are selling direct, and you need to adjust. And then the next kind of thing to think about is, okay, so private label deals were going on yesterday, so therefore if you want to get into that, that's something to plan for next year. Have everything teed up that you have the correct inventory and the correct ideas heading into the end of the end of, let's call it June, so that you're set up for next year's Prime Day, which clearly they're going to make this an annual event, and probably be in July every year because it's clearly not tagged to a day. The next thing that I noticed was, for me, I had priced certain things like I had been talking about, things that I was worried about long-term storage. I priced to move certain things, and you definitely saw. I've been doing it now for about a month, so I've really reduced a lot of this stuff without kind of seeing massive tanking. But again, selling into the strength of the velocity of the site, so you're seeing so much volume and so many transactions go on. You definitely want to be doing that. But I've also started seeing, I saw that today still, that there was still excess volume on the site. The velocity was definitely higher, leading to, again, the ability to kind of move product. And then the other thing that you can probably still do now, which we didn't really talk about much last week, was a lot of sellers were looking to blow out of their inventory and capitalize on the velocity. But you potentially could have been sitting back and waiting, and now there's going to be gaps, right? So with a day that has 3 times the volume of a normal day, if the seller, kind of had enough inventory for a standard month, they may have blown out of their inventory, and now you can be positioned well to price back or however you want to be doing it, and getting sales for the next couple of weeks, where a lot of people may have stocked out, including Amazon. There may be things that Amazon just ran out of yesterday. Again, in that CNBC article that I posted in there, they talk about some of the biggest brands, that a lot of them are not things that, they're really Amazon-centric things like Charmin and, I don't remember the other one, if it was Clorox or Tide. But, again, just seeing how much velocity was going on, you probably have items that you didn't expect to hit your number that you forgot you had and sold, because potentially people who were lower down in the buy box were just taken out in the tidal wave of traffic that was on the site. So thinking for next year, again, maybe you want to look at the strategies of where items that you have that are priced higher now and you're getting sales at those higher prices because people kind of ran out. Think about that for, make a mental note or a marker to do something, plan accordingly for next year. So moving on to other things to do now, right? So here we are, middle of July. There's still plenty of time left for the summer. So in thinking of things to be doing for the summer for your Amazon business, I think, if you go to the stores now, I think you're going to start to see the inventory change beginning already. Even though you're like, oh my goodness, it's still July, stores are starting to move towards that back to school season, that fall season. So now's the time to kind of take a peek, do a little store research or Amazon research, and seeing, hey, these are summer specific things that either are starting to be on sale, or I still can buy at retail or wholesale. And there's plenty of time to still do very well. Like, you have a solid 45 days of people purchasing summer related items. Heading into Labor Day weekend, there are still people who may be buying things for their summer activities or that last hurrah, even though they may have to put it away after Labor Day, or if they live in a warm weather, they can use it all year. There's plenty of time. So think about that, plan for that. Don't go, overly crazy, because understanding that you have already missed the entire June and half of July and whatever of May there was, but there is still time to be selling summer stuff. So if you see the opportunities, definitely don't think, oh, I missed the boat, because there's still time. The next thing I was thinking about was back to school. So here we are, July, as I've said a few times already. And back to school, depending on where you live, starts as early as, August. It starts as late as after Labor Day. So here where I live, my kids don't go back to school till after Labor Day. But that doesn't mean that other parts of the country don't start going back to school earlier. And there's all kinds of things to be thinking about for back to school. So, I know Dwayne has done some shows on back to school specifically. And I think the idea is, as the market evolves, and whether you're doing, let's assume for the most part at this point, if you have not yet done a private label for back to school, you won't have time to get it done, most likely. So going under the assumption that you are looking at some sort of arbitrage or wholesale, if you are planning on doing wholesale, you're a little late, so you want to get on that. But again, I think one of the things that kind of people forget and kind of get too fixated on is everybody focuses on, let's say, the the few specific items that they think. When they think of back to school, they think of backpacks, or they think of back to school, they think of pencil kits or whatever it is. I think the idea is to think a little bit more globally, think about things on a broader sense. Whether you want to bundle things or not, that's a whole nother discussion. And again, if you're going to be bundling it via wholesale, or if you're going to be bundling it via wholesale and ROA, or just combination, or just standalone, there's a lot that you have to do in terms of knowing how to plan for that, from a keyword, from a listing, all that stuff. But you don't have to be focused on simply the kid who's going back to school and needs a backpack. At the same time, there's money to be made in the markets of things that people need to go back to school. So of course, people need backpacks. But now is the time to kind of focus on the trends, like looking at the store, seeing what they're stocking up on, knowing the movies, knowing the TV shows, the characters. I think, the summer has had a bunch of new movie releases. Disney or other animated films. The Secret Life of the Pets just came out. I'm totally blanking on Zootopia. Was out earlier in the summer. And kind of seeing where your kids or other kids' trends have gone to, because I think the movies and the general ideas out there are going to be big. I mean, I have no personal experience with it, but Pokemon Go, right, is like the hottest thing. You have, you have people walking around, like literally wandering around like zombies because they're staring at the phone trying to get these things. Well, it's going to spill over into all aspects of the coming 6 months easy, right? So thinking about these things, whether it's back to school, whether it's the holidays, these are things to consider. So, I wrote down here that like movies and summer movies, if a movie is out now, the merchandise has been out for a couple of months already. So now you're going to start to see some of the more related merchandise moving. But if a movie comes out now, typically they're going to try and get that DVD out sometime in the fourth quarter. So just because if you feel like, oh man, I missed that push, whether it was Zootopia or something else, if that merchandise doesn't move the way you want now, it could come back around when that DVD comes back around in the fall, which would align really well for a holiday selling season. So again, things to think about, whether it's going to be the actual merchandise, whether it's back to school backpack, whether it's toys, or it can be things like pajamas. So, in the summer, everyone's buying the summer pajamas for their kids, but eventually it's going to get colder, probably depending on where you live, how much colder. And they're going to want long sleeves, or they're going to want, warmer things. So again, planning, and depending on your financial resources, depending on your space, you can stock up and kind of save and kind of plan accordingly for that. So going back to the back to school, I think now is definitely the time to be purchasing and sending in. Again, there's so many different aspects, but I think about the fringe in the sense of kids are not the only people that go back to school. Teachers go back to school. So think about, what do teachers need, whether it's their specific teacher supplies, whether it's supplying things that are niche specific to them. All these different things can lead you in different directions. Again, things to be thinking about, looking at the trends in the stores and seeing what clearly is going to be coming up for this coming school season. Like I mentioned, the other big thing that I like for back to school is shoes and clothing, because most of the time that is when the kids, when they come back from camp or whatever they're doing this summer, typically they've grown, their shoes don't fit, they've ripped them, whatever it may be, and it's time to entice the kid to get excited for school, get new outfit, get new clothing, get new shoes, get new sneakers, whatever it may be. So those are some of the things to be thinking about outside of the standard, hey, everybody needs school supplies. Not to say the school supplies don't do well. There's lots to be said about that and lots to research. Sitting here and kind of giving you that idea or this idea probably won't help you as much as you kind of looking into different avenues and how you want to be positioning yourself. So all of these things kind of lead you into the back half of the year where we get to Q4. Now, everyone always talks about the holidays. keep in mind in Q4, there are 3 holidays that kind of just like jump out. The first is Halloween. So it's kind of like missed by a lot of people. And the ordering season for wholesale of Halloween could be now, where costumes can do phenomenally well. But again, thinking about the holiday on the fringe, don't just go for the costume or the wig or whatever it is. Think about it more broadly. Think about what you do for the holiday, or if you do nothing, then, kind of look at your neighbors or people you know who are very into their holidays and what are they doing for the holiday. The same goes for Thanksgiving, that next holiday. So people kind of, again, forget that Thanksgiving is obviously it's become into a very commercial thing with Black Friday and people running out to stores and everything. But the prep leading into that for a lot of people is very kitchen centric, right? It's home centric. People are having company that they haven't had in a year sometimes or longer. So coming home for the holidays doesn't have to be, one holiday or another. It's just the whole season is very cooking intensive, very kitchen intensive, very dining room, very home. There are so many things that if you don't want to be chasing that toy, or you don't want to be up against 150 or 700 in the case of Pie Face last year, those kinds of sellers, there's plenty of other things to start researching now, whether it's wholesale, whether it's going to be via retail ARB or online ARB, that you can be purchasing for the seasons. Again, for Halloween, for Thanksgiving, and then what I would call the Christmas season, given that there are many multiple holidays, Hanukkah and other things that kind of tag along with the gift-giving season of Christmas. So all those things have ancillary and, peripheral things where seasonal selling has its strengths and, comes with lots of pros. But now is the time to be researching. Chris and I were talking earlier that, last year we were looking at, Travis had asked us before we went on, he was asking us about buy box percentages. And that was kind of how Chris and I, when we were looking at certain things for Q4 last year, we were trying to extrapolate how many we're selling, let's call it across the Amazon platform, in the sense of, we know we sold X number of units, we had the buy box X percentage of the time. You extrapolate what that means in terms of how many units were actually sold, regardless of what Jungle Scout or Ace and Inspector says, to know what you should be ordering, or how many you want to be ordering, or how deep you want to go, and giving you those opportunities. So there are so many tools out there now, and so many things that you can kind of research, extensions and things like that allow you to enhance your search. But again, thinking about this on a bigger perspective of the holidays, just again, not looking to kind of give away people's products. So just sitting down and taking an hour or two and thinking about your business and coming up with a strategy this time of year makes complete sense for the back half. So I think a lot of people then say, well, how am I going to afford to buy all this stuff? Or where am I going to get the cash? How do I grow? Which is something that, like, I've seen a couple of discussions, I've gotten some questions, and I think it's a very fair question. And so I think one of the ways to grow, there's lots of ways to grow. And we talked about earlier that you don't feel like you have to be that guy who does 100,000 a month, 500,000 a month, or $1 million a month. You can be perfectly happy and profitable doing 10,000 a month, or 5,000 or 1,000, whatever your goals are and what your why is, and however you want to do this. But even if you say, hey, I want to grow, there are many ways to grow. One of which, we've talked about a lot, since I've been hosting is networking, reaching out to other people and offering whatever you have as information to almost like first give, and then you'll get back. It will come back around. But let's talk practical in the sense of, hey, I want to have more money. So there have been a lot of discussions about Amazon loans, credit cards, not what I want to talk about tonight. I want to talk about generating cash. How can we get our businesses to position to generate cash? So Dwayne has done a bunch of shows, I'd say in the, the April, May time, maybe even the March time, about would you buy this and would you buy that? And he's posted in some of the groups and people are like, nah, or, only make $1, only make $2, not interesting, all these different things. Well, and people, there's different sides to the story and there's different things to think about. And I'm not looking to get into that right now because I don't have a concrete example. But if you are looking to generate cash, and that is one of your constraints, it's not time, it's not anything else, but you need additional funds, something to think about is what this show was started about and what Dwayne's business started on was fast turns. So that can mean lots of different things, but what it also can mean is fast turning inventory at lower margins just to generate the profit. So again, you have to know your numbers really well, and you have to really know what your true costs of things are. So if someone says to me, hey, you're gonna buy it for 10, you're gonna sell it for 20, and roughly back of the envelope, you're gonna make $4 or $5, that is theoretically correct. But you now need to factor in a bunch of other things. How did it get to Amazon? Well, there's a shipping cost involved. Did you pay someone to prep it? So there may be a built-in cost for an employee. There may be a built-in cost for your your prep center. So does that cost for prep center include the box? Does it not include the box, the bag? Who knows what, right? The sticker. You can send it directly to Amazon. So if we're dealing with high velocity items that you can buy wholesale, you can have your manufacturer ship it directly to Amazon. Sometimes they'll even pay the freight. And you're able to do that not using the, inside FBA, you can have them ship on your own personal shipping. You change the settings on inside Seller Central for that shipment. And as long as you upload, you're going to have to upload whatever the tracking mechanism is, but you won't be partnered carrier. So certain distributor, if you ever get a distributor damage, it's a little bit of a different equation and how you have to go about getting a refund for that. That aside, you can have it shipped direct. If you want to commingle, if you want to have Amazon label it for 20 cents an item, all these things can be done, but you need to factor all this in, right? So if I'm making $4 or $5 an item and now it's going to cost me 15 cents for that item to ship it in and another 50 cents to prep it or whatever it is, another $1, who knows what. Know your true costs, right? So before you get into this, know exactly what you're truly making. But if you're going to net, let's just say $2 an item, and you know that the velocity is you are going to sell 100 of them a month based on looking at what the projected monthly sales are, right? So you take that number and then you say, well, how many sellers are buy box ready? Meaning if the item is selling for $20 on Amazon and there are people who are selling it for 20 who are listed at 25, they're not buy box ready. They're too far out of the range, right? They're 20% above the market. And so at that point, they're not going to be getting your 25%. They're not going to be getting rotation in the buy box. So you want to look at who's getting part of that buy box rotation. And so if you can in turn understand that, hey, there's going to be 10 of us and 1,000 units are going to sell that month, right? So we're each going to get to sell 100 units. That's going to be $200. Let's call it 200 because we're saying after the $4 or $5 of profit, you have another $2 of cost. You're going to make $200 of cash flow profit at the end of that month. That's money that you can design your business however you want, but you can know and market that you've built up $200 more of bankroll. And if you do that again in August, right? So now you have $400. You don't have to roll it. You can take that 200 and put it in a separate bank account and say, hey, that's going to be for my Q4 buying. But again, you can generate another $200 that next month and put it aside. I'm not talking about rolling and rolling and rolling. There's plenty of value in rolling and compounding and all these things. But if you're looking to bankroll, literally bank the money, these are things to look at. What is selling super fast right now that you have access to, whether it's retail or wholesale, and you can just kind of roll profits and set aside for cash that you know there's going to be opportunities to use for whatever it is, whether it's Black Friday spending, whether it's wholesale spending, whether it's, other retail spending because the deals come along, whatever it may be, but you're afraid that you don't have enough cash that you saw last year, you ran out of cash and you want to generate more, this is something, to kind of think about heading into these months before you need the cash, right? So probably would have said to start doing this back in, May or whatever. You do it all year round. But depending on how your business is structured, if you're thinking about needing cash, this is something to think about. Look for fast turning items that are going to move at high velocity, even if it's at a lower profit, just if you want to be making that cash. Again, I'm not saying that this business model fits you long term. It may not, but it will generate extra cash for you, and something to think about as you head into the buying season of the second half of the year. So you can do it with back to school even. You can sell your back to school stuff at a lower margin where it's going to fly over the next 6 to 10 weeks or whatever it may be. It's probably even longer than that. We saw last year probably into the third week of September. Granted, last year Labor Day was late, but we saw it another 2 weeks after Labor Day. So it was the third week of September. Back to school stuff was still selling super strong. So that's something to think about. Like even the lower margin things that, if you're not tying up capital to do other things that you could be doing that you feel like is better for you, if you want to be turning quick cash, this is something to think about, whether it's summer items, back to school items, kind of generate that cash quickly and kind of grow your business that way. The other things that kind of came up, were how to break through the next threshold. I think some of these things kind of will get you there, but I think that's a bigger discussion because I have some interesting things that people have kind of reached out on. So maybe we'll asterisk that for a next week conversation. So if you have any other questions before we kind of wrap it up here, feel free to put it in the chat. But I appreciate everyone who's been on live. We've had a pretty decent crowd, given that we didn't do a lot of promotion for before a couple of hours ago that the show was going to be on. So thank you for attending. Thank you for spending time. Hopefully we've added some value and given you things to think about, whether it was the retirement stuff in the beginning or the back half of the year, things to be thinking about between now and the end of the year. Anyone, any other questions? If not, we will kind of sign it off. All right, so I'm going to shut it down. And again, thanks for everyone for joining.